Hello, and a big warm welcome to you, and welcome to the Facebook Live on, I forgot the title they called, How Babies and Children Learn to Repress Their Feelings and the Choices that we have to respond. So while I wait to see who's going to join in live, if you're watching the recording, welcome, welcome. So glad you're here. Please feel free to come and share and write comments, even if you're watching the recording. I'd love to tell you a little bit about my journey with understanding and responding to and thinking about what I call repression mechanisms. So they're basically things, and welcome, welcome, please come and say hi. What I'm going to be talking about are really the ways that we have all learnt to repress our feelings and how our babies and children learn to do that. And Phoenix, welcome, welcome. So glad you're here. What I'd love to do is tell you a little bit about my journey in case it's helpful. Bridget, welcome. So glad you're here too. So my background, I'll share the bits that are relevant because we could be here for a long while, is I trained as a psychospiritual psychotherapist in the 90s. And in that, I learned a lot about addiction and how that was really caused by, in those days, we talked about unhealed trauma. Now, nowadays, I prefer to really talk about unexpressed feelings. So I think it can be a lot more friendly. And anyway, I won't go into that. Hi, Phoenix. But I think back then, I really thought that addiction was kind of this discrete class of thing, that, you know, there were certain people who had addictions, and then there was kind of like the rest of us. And then I came across aware parenting when I was pregnant with my daughter 16 years ago. And what I love about aware parenting is that it really, it helps us understand how the way we respond to our babies and our children's needs and feelings really has a profound effect on how they then learn to respond to their own needs and feelings. And it really helps us see how, this is what we're going to be talking about, how when we're not able to listen to particular feelings in our babies or children, they need to repress those feelings. So in aware parenting, it's generally called control patterns. I actually don't use the word control patterns anymore because I've really found that, you know, often people, when they first hear the word, can have quite a reaction to it. And I prefer now talking about repression mechanisms. So I'm going to be using that term. Kelly, welcome, welcome. So glad that you're here. Yay. So, yeah, when I was, my first few years of aware parenting with my daughter, I was thinking of repression mechanisms, in those days, control patterns, I call them. I was thinking of them as kind of like the bad guys. It's like, oh no, I want her to never have any control patterns ever. She's not going to have any. And if there was any sign of any, I would be judging myself and feeling guilty and judging them. And that, you know, I had this very unenjoyable way of looking at them. And over the years, that really changed. And what happened is that I became, I'm just reading my notes, so I'm going to be looking. I just want to make sure I say everything that I really want to say to you. So I really found that I got free of judging myself if my children developed them. And I stopped judging repression mechanisms as well. And I actually began to see how incredible they are, really. You know, we really wouldn't have survived as a species if there was no such thing as repression mechanisms. You know, they're quite amazing things. And, you know, they're really important for when there isn't the available loving presence that's required for feelings to flow. And we're going to be talking about that in a lot of detail. So nowadays, I'm really appreciative. Like, if I look back on my own journey and still some of the repression mechanisms I have now, I'm so grateful for those. You know, for most of us, we grew up in a culture and a paradigm that didn't really understand the feelings of babies and children. And, you know, when there isn't that understanding or that space to listen to feelings, we really needed to hold those feelings in. We needed to push them down and repress them. That you know, so when I look back now, I'm incredibly grateful for those. I see they kept me safe. They really protected me. And I really love to have that perspective now for adults and for children, is really appreciating, respecting, honoring repression mechanisms. And I think that's had a really big impact on how I am with my children, with myself, and how I am with working with parents and children. Bridget, I love hearing how that evolved for you. Thank you, thank you. Ivor, hi, and Ebony, hi. So lovely to see you. Yes, and it's made such a difference, and I'm going to talk a lot about that because, how we think about these, really has a profound effect on then how we're feeling in our body, and then how we're actually able to respond to our babies and children, which is, such an important piece. So nowadays, it used to be that I was like, I want my daughter to have no control pens, and nowadays I'm like, I'm just really happy that my children, whether she's 15 and my son's 11, that they have far fewer repression mechanisms than I do, and that I have far fewer than I used to, and I'm much more able to be with my feelings and in the present moment than I ever was, and they're pretty capable of that too, and I'm still open to the possibility that I can still help them have fewer, but I don't have this kind of judgment around them so much. I'm much more kind of fluid with it, and that feels so much more enjoyable, and actually have more capacity to create change. Georgie, welcome. Georgina, hello, hello, hello. So what I really am here for is to really help parents in particular understand the feelings of babies and children, and how babies and children learn to repress their feelings, and what we can do in response, how we can respond. So I'm going to talk a lot about the theory first, and then at the end I'm going to talk more about how we can respond. And I do want to say that this can be a really emotive topic, because all of us as human beings, we all have a lot of feelings, and most of us grew up in a culture where those feelings weren't understood or heard. So most of us have a lot of repression mechanisms, and most of us have, including myself, have passed some of those on down to our children. So I really want to invite you, as you're listening, to be compassionate with yourself. If you feel called to actually stop watching, maybe come back later, to avoid the emotional sticks. So put down, if you're noticing yourself judging yourself or whatever, to put those down, and to really hold yourself with lots of compassion. This is really, and I think it's an incredibly profound topic, really, is feelings and how they get repressed. Joanna, welcome. I'm in full writing mode, but I want to come on here and give you some big love, and I shared it. Oh, thank you, lovely. Love your work, Marion. Been writing madly since we talked. Sorry to distract you. Just had to show you love. So excited. Thank you, lovely. I love the love. I wondered where all those comments were coming in. So, and really part of this journey is looking at our own feelings as well, and that's what I found for myself. I was like, I'm going to help my daughter with this. I'm going to listen to all her feelings and have no control patterns. And I really learned very quickly that it was such a parallel journey of me getting more and more comfortable with the whole range of my feelings, and really learning deep self-compassion. Priscilla, welcome. So glad that you're here. So I know that a lot of you are already familiar with this way of thinking about feelings. It comes from aware parenting. I'm so grateful to Aletha Salter. Some of you may be less familiar, but what I find, and I hope for those of you already well immersed in this way of thinking, is that for me, I love going back again over and over again and looking at this. And, as my journey moves on, to see that I start seeing things in different ways, and so I love keeping on immersing myself and exploring and seeing how my way of seeing things has moved along. Johnny, your gift, thank you, lovely. Woohoo! So I'd love to start off with ourselves first, and maybe you want to share. Kelly saying hi, Jana. I wonder if you notice the ways that you tend to repress your feelings now. So as adults, and please feel free to share if you want to. So the common kinds of things we do as adults is we can distract ourselves, often through things like social media, screens, reading, busyness, thinking, shopping, thinking about the future, nail biting, nose picking, all kinds of things. We can distract ourselves with food, coffee, chocolate, sugar, alcohol. I'm sure you can think of some more things to that list. Eating, yes. We can tense up. So we can tense up our jaw, our pelvis, our neck, our shoulders, It's like that song, isn't it? Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Our chest, our hands. I remember as a teen, you see me in photos, and I was like this in most of those photos. Our arms, you know, we're literally holding on onto the feelings in our bodies through physically tensing up. Having chronic tension in these areas, so that we're not even aware of, but we're chronically, you know, through years and years of tensing up those parts of our bodies so that we don't feel the feelings there. That can happen. Feelings, yeah, definitely a few of those. You notice a few of those. I've definitely got a few of those. They're still, after all these years, I still definitely tend to tense up here. So you think about the ways we would express feelings. So one of them obviously is through crying, through raging, through talking, speaking, expressing our feelings. So I think that's often why so many of the repression mechanisms through our body come through, you know, holding, tensing the mouth, tensing the jaw, tensing the neck, tensing up, you know, and physically the kind of rage type feelings you might have, tensing up arms, necks, shoulders, all these places. Brenda, hi Marion, I'm wondering if you could maybe cover how long it usually takes for a 1-year-old to start crying again once they have learned to suppress it. Thank you so much. So this is going to be more like an info session. I'll probably do what I normally do is, you know, complete Q&A next week, because really it's basically, so a quick answer would be there's no set time. It really depends on what the child's experienced, you know, how many feelings they're holding in, and how, you know, how much we are doing to help release those feelings again. So that's kind of very, very short answer. What else? Movement. So as adults, movement, a form of busyness, constant moving, constant talking, lots of exercise. These can be ways that we can also avoid feeling. So what are we actually doing when we're doing these things? So in some cases, we're taking our attention away from our feelings. That can be taking our attention to something in the outer world. So we're taking our attention away from our bodies. We can be taking attention to our thoughts. So our attention is going to our thoughts rather than, again, our bodies, which is where our feelings reside. In some cases, when we're doing those tensing up things, we're actually tensing up so we're not able to feel, because feelings need movement in order for us to feel them. So if we're tensing up, it actually prevents us from feeling those feelings. And in some cases, we're dissociating. So I'm using the word repression, and dissociation actually technically is not a repression mechanism. It's a different type of mechanism, but I'm going to include it anyway because I like the term. In dissociation, we're really taking our attention away from our body entirely, and you know, it's kind of leaving it to a more extreme degree. And in fact, there are probably millions and millions and gazillions of ways that we can do to take our attention away from what we're actually feeling in the moment. So, which really includes not only what we're feeling in the here and now, but often much more is actually all the accumulated feelings that we didn't get to express in our past that all still reside in us. And basically, pretty much anything can become a repression mechanism. Pretty much anything. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? You know, anything, a position, a body position, a posture, a way of thinking, so many things really can become one. And isn't that kind of an incredible thing? Isn't I like to call it, you know, like our psyche, body, mind, spirit, the whole of us, we're incredible beings. Isn't that incredible that we have this multitude of ways to actually hold in feelings? It has all these ways. And do you ever wonder why? Have you ever wondered why that is? Why are there all these ways? And why are we doing this anyway? Why do we do all of these things? And it's really basically to avoid being in the present moment, which includes all of us, all our past experiences, as well as the presence of being here and being now. And really to avoid being present with a feeling that's arising in the here and now, which is often, you know, feelings will arise from the past because we're being reminded of them in the present. Kat, welcome. So we're really avoiding being in the here and now and the feelings from the past that show up in the here and now. And there are 3 ways that we can have feelings as adults. So unmet needs. So if we've got some unmet needs in the present moment, that there's going to be feelings there, so we can repress those. We can also have feelings from the past showing up in the present moment, and we can repress those too. And we can also have feelings that are coming from our ways of thinking, and we can repress those as well. So 3 ways of doing that. So why don't we just stay present with our bodies instead of doing all these things? So, well, you've probably guessed it. We've either learned these ways of responding to our feelings, or we've learnt similar ways. So, for example, we may have had TV, because there wasn't Instagram when I was growing up, TV as a child, and then it kind of morphs into something similar, so then may become screens. So we learn those from our families, from our schools, from our culture. Or we found them ourselves when we had painful feelings, and the people around us either didn't understand those feelings, they weren't able to be present with those, they were distracted, they had their own feelings going on, things were too busy. For whatever reason, they weren't able to be fully present with us, or present enough with us for us to be able to express those feelings at the time. Kat, hello, I couldn't find the live on your page. Thankfully, Jana shared this. Oh, thank you, Jana. Yay! So there are these 2 ways. There are 2 ways that we learn repression mechanisms. There's the first, which is our feelings were responded to in these kinds of ways, so we directly learnt to respond to them in those ways. Or our feelings, for whatever reason, weren't being heard and mirrored, so we found our own ways to repress them. So, for example, one of them, like the first, one of the most common types of the first is eating repression mechanisms. So they're usually passed down in families. So if your parents tended to eat when you're upset, that will tend to get passed down. That's one of the ones that's commonly number 1. And why is that? So I'd love to unpack that a little bit in case it's helpful. So if your parents tended to eat when they're upset to protect themselves from feeling uncomfortable feelings, then it's likely that, number 1, they would interpret your painful feelings as hunger. So, it's really seeing at that level. It's a whole different way of thinking. So they would interpret your painful feelings as hunger. 2, they would then respond to what they thought was hunger, of course, with offering food or feeding, which then led to 3, you then interpreting your painful feelings as hunger, because how we're responded to becomes how we interpret our own inner body sensations. 4, then finding it hard to differentiate ourselves between hunger and feelings, because of that response. So those body states that we have, we would find hard. We would find when we felt upset, we would then interpret that as hunger. What am I up to? Because I did A, B, C, D, E, whatever the next one is, 5, is it? Then asking for food when you're upset, and then clearly eating when you're upset. So that just basically becomes, it becomes that internalization of how the veil through which generally our parents, but also school culture sees things becomes then, that's how it gets passed on. It really becomes that, how we interpret our internal sensations based on how we're responded to. I hadn't made that connection that they interpret it as hunger, as the parent looking at the child. It makes so much sense. Yes, to me, it's only quite recently, I think only a couple of years ago, that I really kind of got, that's actually what's going on. It's because it's not that, the baby or the child isn't going, oh, I know I'm upset, but, I'll ask for food. What we've done is we internalize that. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I was younger, like in my teens, it took me a long time to differentiate hunger from upset feelings. And I think it's so common in our culture that those 2 things are confused. It can take really some time to really untangle those in ourselves. The other thing I really used to confuse is tiredness and hunger. So often, we're fed when we're tired, and then that becomes tricky to untangle those 2 different states. Jana's back again. Hello, lovely. Kat, and why people desperately feed babies at times. Yes, because that's that way of thinking becomes passed down. And again, I really want to invite you, everyone, to really refrain. If you have any sticks or whatever's coming up for you, this is so common. This happens for probably the majority of us in our culture, that whole feeding and feelings things has got tangled up. So I really want to let you know you're not alone. This isn't about judgment. This is really about awareness and understanding how these things work. And, you know, I really want to keep repeating that over and over. Please have lots of compassion for yourself. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? I just had that in my notes before we go any further. I'd like us to pause here and connect in. Bit of self-compassion of your inner loving mother. I'm here, I'm listening, I'm right here with you. So let's go back to babies. So infancy, let's go back to our infancy, perhaps the infancy of our children. Perhaps your child or children are still a baby. They've got twins, that would be 2, or triplets. I also really want to remind you, so important to remember that it's never, ever, ever, ever too late to listen to feelings. It's not too late ever to listen to a baby's feelings, a child's feelings, or an adult's feelings. And that's so clear, obviously, isn't it? I'm sure for most of you, you've been on a step of gradually getting more comfortable with a wider range of your feelings. And it really shows it's never too late. So I really want to remind you that piece. You know, if there have been places where you maybe haven't been able to listen to as many feelings as you would like to, it is never too late. Never, ever, ever. So, and what's the amazing thing is, for babies and young children in particular, we can actually really often really clearly see these repression mechanisms in operation. So as children get older, repression mechanisms tend to get a little bit more internal. So they do become more, tend to be like the more body tension ones. So we can see them less easily. They become thinky. And there's still obviously external ones as well. But there's this magical window when they're babies and small children that we can actually see their psyche in operation. It's quite an incredible thing. And so I really love to see that as a, wow, how amazing is that? We're seeing the foundation of their psyche in their behavior. Kat, I still have trouble differentiating tiredness and hunger sometimes. Yeah, I so hear you. I so understand that. I really get you on that. And if I do, sometimes I still eat. Haha, yes, yes. I think this new awareness on interpretation will help. Oh, yay, I'm so glad. Thank you. Because really that's my intention for today, is to help us as much, you know, with our own feelings and repression mechanisms, as well as helping us so that we can help our children. And Ebony, Kat, I know what you mean with eating when you're tired. Yes, yes, yes. And then it will really help. Oh, that's why it's really hard for me to differentiate those two, because it wasn't differentiated by the people I grew up with. And again, because how could they? Because it wasn't differentiated for them. You know, it wasn't, they didn't have those two responded to differently in them. Let's see. So I'd love to talk more about feelings, painful and particularly uncomfortable feelings. I'm going to be talking about. You may notice I don't use the word negative to describe feelings, which, you know, people sometimes do. So I love to embrace the beauty of all feelings. You know, that all feelings have beauty, and, you know, to really love feelings. And I think it can be hard to do that if we're calling some negative and some positive. Of course, please do whatever you want to do. Just personally, I won't be using that. So what I love to say is, however much we aim to respond promptly and accurately to a baby and child's needs, all babies and children will at times feel uncomfortable feelings. And I think this can be a hard thing for us, particularly if, you know, we had challenging times when wanting to make sure our children don't experience the pain that we did. And we're you know, with so much love, wanting to protect them from pain and make sure they have a wonderful, you know, wonderful life. But I think that can also sometimes mean that we can perhaps then overlook that you know, that it is part of the human experience to experience painful and uncomfortable feelings. And of course, it doesn't mean we do any less to make sure we meet their needs and do everything we possibly can, but to really acknowledge that we're absolutely not going to be able to prevent them from having any uncomfortable feelings. It's just not possible. Kat, you said, I think Hugh eats when he's tired. I do ask if he's hungry or tired, and he says hungry. Do you need any suggestions on how to help him differentiate, if you have time to discuss it? Yeah, can you remind me again at the end? But I love it, love the question. Kat, or maybe you'll discuss it for all repression mechanisms later. I'll exercise my patience. A bit excited about this awareness. Oh, I love you, and please keep sharing, because I love the dialogue. You know, this is more of a talky one than my usual ones, but I still love to hear. And yes, I will actually be talking about once I've kind of given this more theoretical piece, I'm going to talk about practical things at the end. But I really think the theory piece is so important. I think often we want to go, okay, well, what can I do? But because one of the most important steps, the first step I'm going to talk about is how in order to respond in the ways that we need to, that are going to help them be free to express their feelings, the first way that we can do that is the way we're thinking about what's happening, which is why I'm giving you a lot of theory, because it's the thinky piece really helps our emotional state, which then affects how we can respond and what they pick up from us. Jacqueline, welcome. Kat, oops, do you have, not need, I got that. And Joss, welcome, so lovely to see you. So, babies feel the full range of feelings that come from things like unmet needs, such as for holding, for closeness, for understanding, for touch, for presence, and for attunement to their needs. They have feelings that come from experiences that are frightening or overwhelming, and from experiences that are painful. So right from birth, and even before birth, babies have feelings. They have big feelings. So they can feel things like discomfort, agitation, confusion, overwhelm, frustration, helplessness, powerlessness, loss, sadness, fear, terror, rage, shock, and a whole lot more, and a whole lot of nuances in between those. And of course, to give a little bit of balance, they do experience the whole range of feelings. So also those that come from needs that are met, and also from their from enjoyable experiences, and also from their own innate state. So things like curiosity and wonder, happiness and delight and joy and excitement, and all the kinds of things that, of course, we want our babies and children to feel. So I'm going to talk a few different situations where they might feel feelings like this. And part of the reason I'm doing this, I know a lot of you are really familiar with this material, but I think we can almost never do this too much, of really getting clear on our child's emotional cartography, really seeing, like, what were their early experiences, how perhaps they have themes that happened during their birth, after their birth, that tend to, have repeated kind of experiences that kind of have themes for them. And I think the more we can understand that and have that emotional cartography for them, the more we can help them. So that's also why I'm really going into this in depth. Kat, yes, understanding brings awareness, which then can bring calmer response. Exactly. And that's, exactly what babies and children live in, that, that emotional world. So the way we're thinking about it, about these repression mechanisms and their feelings, does have a profound effect on the emotional state that we're in, which then has a profound effect on the extent to which they're free to express their feelings. That's why it's so important. Hi, Robert. I didn't see a Robert, but hello, everyone. I'm going to have a sip of water. Please, if you have water, because it's really helpful to have water when we're talking about feelings, I think. So, Rachel, hello. I never know if that's how to pronounce your name, so my apologies if it isn't. So I'd love to invite you to hold yourself with lots of extra compassion for this bit. So I'm going to talk about different experiences, which maybe you as a baby or your child or children as babies have experienced. Again, I do want to remind you it's never too late to help them heal from experiences like this and to express the feelings. So the particular situations where they might feel painful feelings are things like in the womb. They might feel, as well as beautiful, blissful, oceanic oneness feelings, they may also feel fear, discomfort, agitation. During birth, they may feel, and we may have felt, discomfort, agitation, overwhelm, fear, terror, rage, helplessness, powerlessness. If they were separated after birth, or if we were, there might be confusion, sadness, loss, fear, terror, rage, helplessness. You'll see similar feelings come up often a lot. If they experience medical procedures during or after birth, there might be pain, helplessness, frustration, fear, terror, rage. And if they were left alone to cry, they might have felt, and we might have felt, fear, overwhelm, confusion, terror, helplessness. And I really want to remind you, while I'm speaking this, you may even find yourself suddenly, I don't know, wanting to have a cup of coffee, or you're already probably you might be on your phone already, but you know, it's really natural as we talk about these things that those feelings can bubble up, and we may be wanting to go, oh, I don't really want to feel those. So I really want to remind you that it's never too late for us to feel these feelings, or to help our babies and children to feel them, release them. That's the wonderful thing about this. Cat, water and flowing feelings seems in sync, so in sync, isn't it? So what else? For babies, things like going out to the shops can be, or busy places, there can be confusion, overwhelm, fear. Loud noises, there can be confusion and shock. Their needs not being understood, they can feel, we could have felt, confusion, sadness, helplessness, loss. I don't know about you, but it's becoming like, oh my gosh, there's all these big feelings, aren't there? A lot of big feelings. Being left alone, we or they can experience fear, loss, sadness, confusion, helplessness. Being distracted by our own feelings or unmet needs or the past can lead to confusion or fear, or sadness. Arguments in the family, they can feel fear and shock and confusion. Being pushed or treated roughly by older siblings, there can be shock, fear, helplessness. Just a few more, 3 more. Big trips, holidays, travel, moving house, can be overwhelm or confusion. Illness, teething, accidents, again, confusion, shock, pain. And developmental cusps, so that's part of what I'm saying, you know, every baby and child experiences repeated developmental cusps, and frustration is a really, it's part of that. That feeling is part of those developmental cusps. Cat, hi Jess. Hey Cat. So you can probably see that even if we're doing everything we can to meet a baby's needs, that every baby is going to experience some uncomfortable feelings at times, and every baby is going to experience a different amount. So baby's going to experience more of those if, for example, if the mother's stressed during the pregnancy, if there are medical interventions during or after birth, so separated after birth, the longer the separation was, there are medical procedures afterwards, if the parents are stressed or overwhelmed, if the older siblings are aggressive, there are big moves or lots of outings or loud noises, you know, there's going to be more. So really that's, you know, when you ask questions like how long does it take, it's really seeing that there can be such a huge wide range in experience, and you know, for us as well, you know, depending on what we experienced in our younger years. And babies also have different sensitivity levels. So if you, again, you know my work, you would really know about the highly sensitive child and person model of Elaine Aron, and you know, really that the highly sensitive we are, also the more we're affected by these things too. So we're going to have bigger feelings about the same incident as another child. Kat's so excited to see my friends here. Yay, welcome, so glad. So how did we acquire repression mechanisms? How do our babies and children acquire them? And again, I really invite you to avoid judgment of yourself, your parents, our culture. Repression mechanisms, you know, they're really, we wouldn't have survived as a culture if they didn't exist. So I really want to remind you the 2 ways. We can learn to repress our feelings from the way that our feelings were responded to, so that direct route, or we can learn to repress feelings in other ways when there isn't the kind of loving presence or understanding or attention for feelings to be expressed in the moment. And again, lots of self-compassion required. It takes a lot to listen to the feelings of babies and children. And pretty much all babies are going to require repression. Acquire repression mechanisms, not require. And one of the ways that feelings can get repressed, Rosemary, welcome. Ebony, I love that you're framing repression mechanisms in a positive way, knowing that everyone uses them. Exactly, and that's, you know, that's what I love about the journey I've taken. That's what I really want to get across. If we are judging repression mechanisms, they're going to actually want to hang out even more. And if we're judging them in our children, or if we're judging ourselves that our children have them, we're actually doing the opposite. And I'm going to be talking a lot about that. We're actually going to make it less likely for them to be actually able to release those repression mechanisms. So that's why we really want to get across this idea of, let's celebrate them, let's appreciate them, let's see, you know, what amazing things they are and how much they help, and you know, how we wouldn't have got through if we hadn't had them. And so really just having that, you know, appreciation of them, so I think is so helpful. Yay, some hellos and hellos. Hello, everybody. So what are the ways that feelings can get repressed? So in babies, there are a few different ways. So we can distract them. So we may sing songs or point to things. Look at the lovely birdie. We can really just take their attention away from their feelings in quite easy ways. A baby can move their position and just, you know, to keep their attention away from themselves. So distraction's one really key way. We can move them, we can jiggle them and rock them and bounce them and push them in the stroller or the pram or the pushchair, or take them in the car. I don't know about you, but I remember with my daughter for the first 3 months, we spent a lot of time on the Fitball, bouncing, 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 a lot of bouncing. And when I talk to people, I do workshops for people who want to become aware parenting instructors, and we start the group with, you know, what are the ways that you started off? And a lot of it is, yeah, I used to do a lot of bouncing, a lot of rocking, a lot of movement. Distraction, movement, food and feeding, as we talked about earlier. Sucking, so sucking's a really helpful way to dissociate from feelings. So giving a dummy or a pacifier is another way of doing that. That's where there's lots of different ways that sucking can be used. We can, and if we either leave them alone physically, or, you know, we're busy, or they're in the car and we're not able to respond, or we're distracted, then they'll find their own ways of repressing their feelings. So it's usually things like thumb sucking, or clinging onto a soft toy or a blanket, or tensing muscles, you know, finding their own ways to do that. So again, I really want to invite you, how would it be if there was no self-judgment, no judgment of repression mechanisms, just really observing, isn't this interesting? Isn't this interesting? This is human beings. This is what we've done as a culture to avoid uncomfortable feelings, and how incredibly creative are we that we found all these ways to do that, in a multitude of ways. Oh, lots more comments. Bum, 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 bum. Hi, Clay, is that how you pronounce it? Ebony, distraction is so ingrained in ideas about interacting with babies. It is, it's so much a part of our culture, and that's why I really, you know, value acceptance and appreciation. Kat, yes, the bouncing with you too, until we found you in your work. Yay! And Kat, yes, Ebony, I so agree with you on that. I see how useful they can be. Yes. And I think that's what I really like to do, to take away from that as well. You know, the difference becomes, the more we become aware of them, is that we can use these consciously in ourselves and also for our babies and children. And there's quite a difference between not really understanding what's going on and actually understanding exactly what's going on, but still at times choosing that you know, you're choosing to use a repression mechanism. It's an entirely different thing. And, you know, so yeah, using it as a tool rather than as something that we're using compulsively. So although it seems like the most compassionate thing to do, to distract our babies and children from their painful feelings, of course we don't want them to, you know, we love them, we don't want them to feel pain. We'd love for them to feel every moment joy and happiness, wouldn't we? Of course, of course, of course. The thing is, when we interpret all their feelings as indicating unmet needs, or we do all these things that we've all done, or, you know, we may not have done all of those ones, but, you know, some of them. The thing is, those feelings don't go away. So if a feeling is about a past unmet need or a frightening or overwhelming situation, and we do one of those many things to babies, that feelings don't go away. Our baby might stop looking upset, but really what we're doing is like what we're talking about for ourselves. We're really just taking their attention away from their body to and away from her here and now experience, away to other. The feelings are still there in her body, so we're really just taking her attention away from them. That's what we're doing. And we're also showing her how to respond to her feelings. So if we do it repeatedly, she learns to respond in similar ways to her feelings. And again, this is undoable as well. I really want to remind you, it's all undoable. And again, as we were talking about before, it will also deeply affect how she interprets her feelings, as we were talking about with the hunger piece. So for example, if any times a baby's upset and we're moving her, she'll come to associate uncomfortable feelings like, oh, I feel this sensation in my body, which might be fear or overwhelm or sadness. Oh, well, that means I need to move, so I will move. That becomes the internalized experience. And then when she's old enough and she can move herself, she'll then tend to move when she's upset. And that can lead to toddlers and children who are constantly moving. So, they're incredibly wise beings, babies. They need to learn right from in the womb, based on their experience. They're taking it all in and learning. And they can relearn. I really want to remind you that. So it's not only that she learns to respond to her own feelings based on how we respond to her feelings, but our responses also affect how she actually experiences and interprets those sensations in her body. So as we talked about hunger, if we tend to, and again, this isn't just sometimes, it's if we do it a lot of the time, we feed a baby when she's upset, she'll then interpret that, as we said, she'll interpret that as I'm hungry and I'll ask for food, because that's the experience that she's had. So it's not only the responses they learn, it's also the interpretation. So for example, if you've given your baby or your child a dummy or a pacifier when she's upset, she will learn to ask for it when she's upset. She will interpret those uncomfortable sensations in her body as that's what she needs. I need this when I feel this. That's, it's like that's the interpretation of what's needed. I think it'd be really helpful to remember that they learnt these things from us, but that's only helpful to remember if we can do it without judging ourselves, is to really understand that they learn these ways of interpreting their feelings from us, from the family, from the people that they're hanging out with. So, if your little ones looked after by their grandparents or by daycare or whoever, they're going to be learning from us how to interpret and respond to their feelings. So, there's some more I didn't see. There's some ha-has and ha-ha. Oh, an aha. Did you have an aha, Phoenix? Love to hear it. There we go. You have shared it here. I have a constantly moving 2.5-year-old. Makes sense. And isn't it wonderful, Phoenix, because, it can be really annoying. They learn these things from us, but sometimes we don't realize. And often the things they learn from us end up being really, we feel annoyed. It's probably when you're 2.5-year-olds moving all the time, you may have felt annoyed in the past, I imagine. But if we can hold ourselves with compassion, not in a judgy way like, oh, they learnt it from me and blah, blah, I'm terrible, blah, blah, blah. But, oh, they actually learnt this from me. It helps us to be compassionate to them and to be far less likely to respond to them in ways that we don't want to, because we're going, well, they actually really just learned that from us. Doing what they learned to do. Kat, this is really interesting about movement. This could be a flag for me that I hadn't noticed. Thank you. I'm so glad, Kat. And thank you for sharing, because I know, lots of you very experienced with this. So it really does. And I find that for me too, that, really investigating each time that we can still have aha moments and new pieces that we hadn't got before. Ebony, I always feel so much calmer about parenting in a aware manner when I've been listening to or reading your work, Marion. It's never too late to learn or relearn. Yay! Oh, I'm so glad, Ebony, because that's such my passion, as you know, is absolute self-compassion for ourselves and our children. And yes, having all this awareness and knowledge, but I think so many of us, and myself included, we come into it and then we want to do it perfectly, believe there is such a thing as perfectly, judge ourselves, blah, 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 blah. And then it makes the whole experience not very enjoyable. So for me, so wonderful to have the information, but using it with deep compassion for ourselves and really understanding the hugeness of shifting something that's been going on for thousands of years, and to expect ourselves to do that straight away with our first child, particularly in a culture that doesn't understand that. It's like you know, it's really, we're not going to be able to do it, are we? It takes time to create the kinds of changes we're talking about. So I think we need lots of compassion, lots and lots and lots. Kat, oh my goodness, yes, on the irritation, laughing for myself on that now. Yes, I'm so glad that's helpful. It's really remembering, you know, yes, it's really annoying that they're wanting to feed 20 times in the night, or running around and never stopping, or constantly asking for entertainment, but they did learn those from us. So let's be compassionate. Let's, you know, it's easy to be compassionate, rather than the other thoughts we might have, like, oh my God, why are they doing that again? Rachel, oh yes, lots of movement and feeling annoyed when they do. Thank you. Oh, I'm so glad. Well, I'm already so glad I did this, because if the little, not the little, the bigger ha's that some of you have had, that's gold for me. Lana, but isn't it also a positive that our children know what they need to move through the big feelings? Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to, you know, the whole point of sharing this is so we can help them express more, so that we're actually free to hear more, but really within the context that, because what I found, you know, in my own journey and talking to so many, probably thousands of people now who practice aware parenting, is there's so much of this judgment around repression mechanisms, and so much self-judgment and so much shoulding around it, that actually gets in the way of us being able to listen. So that's why I'm talking about this a lot, because I think it has such a profound impact on increasing our capacity to be able to listen to more, paradoxically. So absolutely, I'm all for fear, you know, my work's about feelings, but absolute compassion for this piece, which actually allows more, paradoxically. Kat, yes, I do too. Ebony Marin's lives and audios are such helpful touchstones. Oh, thank you. Loving the love. Thank you, lovelies. Leo, I'm so glad you're here. As always, such beautiful, gentle wisdom. So touchy here. Kat, gold for us too, Marin. Thank you, lovelies. I'm so glad. Yummy, yummy. Ha! Gosh, I'm so thirsty. So, so where did I get to? Yeah, so what about the second type of repression mechanisms? You know, and the ones that they're not, or we didn't directly learn, or they're not directly learning from us. But it's more when either we don't understand that our baby or child is trying to express painful feelings, or when we're preoccupied, or when we're full of our own upset feelings or unmet needs, and we're really not able to listen to those feelings. So this can be really common. For example, I've noticed a lot when a baby has an older sibling and they're needing to be put in the car a lot to take their sibling to school. Those feelings can bubble up and often can lead to thumb sucking. It can also happen when babies are left alone, if there's controlled crying or cry out. Or really just when we don't realize that they're trying to express their feelings to us and we're doing other things. You know, we think that we're meeting need, but actually they're trying to express feelings to us. So babies are going to find a way to repress those feelings, because uncomfortable feelings felt without loving support feel unbearable. That's one of the keys to this whole talk. So they're really too much for our nervous system as babies and small children. If we're left alone with really big feelings, or there isn't enough loving presence for us, it's really too much for us to be with, which is why we and our babies and children then will do things there'll be a certain point that there'll be maybe some crying, and then the feelings will be repressed. So babies will learn themselves to do things like suck their thumbs, or their fingers, 2 fingers, 1 finger as a whole, a variety, both hands sometimes. Clutch onto a soft toy or a blanket. You may have had one of those. I had a bunny. You probably all know I was in an incubator for the first 5 weeks of my life, and I had a bunny, which was my main repression mechanism, and I had that till I was about 25. that was my thing. That was the way I repressed my feelings, especially at night time. Yeah, so they can be soft toys, blankets, or they might scratch their own skin, they might bang their head, they might get in one particular position and stay there. They might tense up particular muscles. That can often lead to, you know, things like digestive issues if they're really tensing up a lot. So, you know, again, amazing, isn't it? Amazing that babies have this capacity if there isn't enough loving presence. And I really want to invite you not to hit yourself with a stick there. You know, that can even just be when we're busy, or we're dealing with we're responding to another child, or we're stressed, or we've got our own feelings. Doesn't mean that they don't experience love and compassion from us. It just means at times there isn't that available loving presence that they need to express their feelings. So Kat, you said, so now I can reframe Ash crying in the car for a long trip as him choosing to share rather than repress. Thanks for that reminder. Yes, and you know, particularly Ash's age, he's just turned 2, hasn't he? You know, for a small baby, of course, we need to be holding them to make those feelings really have that loving support. But for a 2-year-old, you could be talking. I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm listening. Even when you're driving, because that's enough loving support for a 2-year-old when you're really there, and maybe reach a hand round if it feels safe, and maybe his brother can also put his hand on his leg or his hand to provide that loving support. Rebecca, what about teenagers? How do we get them to talk about their issues? So Rebecca, I really recommend, Lael is on this call, Lael Elizabeth. She is the Aware Parenting Teenagers Queen. So I really recommend going and having a look at, there's an Aware Parenting Teenagers group. I'm really talking more, I have a teenager, but I'm really talking more about younger children here. So, but I also think it can be really helpful to still have this theoretical underpinning and understand their emotional cartography, so that we know that when, you know, a teenager wants to be on the screen 24/7, or is biting their nails, or is starting to drink alcohol, or more than that, you know, we can understand their emotional cartography and also the progression of those repression mechanisms, which I'm going to be talking about. And it's still the same, actually, in a way, the kinds of things I'm going to be talking about, because they still require the same thing, which is loving presence. So I'm going to be talking about that. Kat, how can you tell if a soft toy is a repression mechanism versus a special soft toy? What's your belief on that? I think it's always, for any repression mechanism, we can usually tell by, and I love your question because I hadn't written about this, is when they want it. So for example, if they fall over and hurt themselves and they suddenly want the soft toy, or the food, or the screen, or they start picking their nose, that's probably pretty clear that that's a repression mechanism. Or if the minute they get tired, they want that thing, that's often an indication, because feelings bubble up when they're tired. It's also observing them with that thing. If they tend to be a little bit more, they look a little bit more dissociated and they're not so available for eye contact, and you can feel there's a different quality in their bodies when there's a repression mechanism than when it's something that's being engaged with presence. So I hope that helps. Phoenix, I think as a new parent, you're so nervous about sleep or lack of it that you do enlist distraction repression mechanisms in order to try and develop some kind of sleep pattern that you think is workable for your needs. Hard stuff. I so hear you, Phoenix, and see, that's why I think it's so important to have compassion for ourselves. That, you know, this is, you know, this kind of parenting is not easy, and we need a lot of compassion for ourselves. Kat, yes, we're always listening, and yes, Hugh holds his hand too in the car. So lovely to hear you making suggestions that we do. It's reassuring. Yay, that you're already doing it. Fantastic. Ebony, do you think it's more beneficial to use a known repression mechanism like a dummy in the car rather than leaving Bub to find other repression mechanisms? I think yes, and I think even more helpful is giving present time before getting in the car, so that they can get to, and afterwards, so that they can get to, but particularly beforehand, so they get to express the feelings beforehand with us, so that those feelings aren't bubbling up in the car when they're where they're kind of on their own, for a baby in particular, you know, because they need more of that closeness. So, and I know that's hard, and again, lots of self-compassion, but if you can, giving that kind of that real present time beforehand can really help. Rebecca, thanks so much. That's my pleasure. And yes, it does help. Great question, Ebony. Yay, thank you, everyone. So what happens over time is there are small or large experiences, day-to-day life, and feelings do accumulate. So as they don't get to express those feelings, and even if we're aiming to listen to feelings, we're not going to be able to listen to 100%. So those feelings will tend to accumulate, and they build up in their bodies. And whatever percentage of feelings we are able to be present within ourselves and be with them, and listen to those feelings get mirrored, and we're mirroring those feelings. Those feelings get to be released. And when we're mirroring those feelings, we're able to hold that space where we're comfortable with those feelings, or comfortable enough. Babies get to experience that they can have connection when they have painful feelings, that painful feelings can be felt, that when we feel painful feelings with loving support, we come out the other side feeling relaxed and at peace. So they get that body experience, which I think is like gold. And I think this is why it can be hard for us practicing this, especially in the early days, because often we didn't get that experience. We didn't get the experience of being with someone who was really comfortable with sadness or confusion or overwhelm or grief or rage. So no one was able to absolutely be with us, loving presence, mirroring those feelings, staying with us, giving us this body felt sense of safety. And yes, I know you're feeling, that's the kind of thing that they're getting you. I know you're feeling upset, but you're okay. We may not be saying okay, but we're holding that intention that they will come out the other side. And because we didn't get to often experience that, we don't have that body sense of trusting that. And I think that's why it can be really hard at the beginning, because we don't have that inner knowledge in ourselves. So the more we can have empathy buddies, or go and see a therapist or someone who can really listen to the full range of our feelings, then we have that body sense of, oh my gosh, if I feel my absolute rage or my grief and someone's with me, I come out the other side and I feel lighter, I feel relieved. Those feelings actually do shift, and that's an amazing experience that we get to give our children when we can give that kind of mirroring. So the feelings become feelings that are safe and heard when we can be there in that way. They get to experience the connection when they have painful feelings. That painful feelings can be felt, and yes, that we come out the other side feeling relaxed and at peace. So they get that mirroring, the mirroring piece we were talking about before in terms of things like confusion between hunger and tiredness. But the more we can mirror them accurately and be with those feelings, they get that mirroring, that they feel sad, we mirror back the sadness, we're able to be present with it, and then they have a much more clear parallel between our outer response and their inner state. So they get to know, oh, so this is sadness, or this is fear, or this is overwhelm, and there's someone to be there with me. And when they're there with me, I come out the other side having expressed those feelings, and I feel lighter and more present. And they're not thinking that clearly, but, oh yes. So there's that really felt experience. They learn that feelings are their friends. So whatever percentage of feelings that we do have the capacity to be with, which, as I say, I don't think for any of our children they're going to express 100%, and mine personally haven't. But whatever percentage we can listen to, they get to express, and those feelings and the physiological correlates of those feelings get to leave their bodies. Again, I invite us all to have lots of self-compassion here. Brenda, what if an older baby or toddler starts sucking his thumb when you're making dinner? Would this be a CP, or is he just getting excited about dinner but doesn't want to cry? So generally, excitement, I would say, unless everyone in the family is really uncomfortable with excitement. So I love your question, is really joyful feelings. If a family is really uncomfortable with absolute joy and wonder and delight, and they're not comfortable with that, then yes, babies and children can learn to repress those kinds of feelings as well. But generally, if you're pretty comfortable with excitement, then it would be very unlikely that they are repressing excitement. It's more likely that they're being reminded of some past feelings, and those are bubbling up in the here and now. Doesn't know how to wait with patience. Yeah, it's not really, I would say more, I don't know if it resonates with you, but there are either some feelings around not being connected, which again, you can try this out. What happens if you, there's so many great things now, those standy things, I didn't have when my kids were that age, but you can have them close with you. And if there's closeness, is this still here? And then that tells you it's probably not an immediate need. It's probably far past feelings bubbling up. Lana, yes, Catry soft toy. I was thinking the same, as I know soft toys can also be helpful to companion to aid small babies, and beyond understand that they're separate from mum. Winnicott, famous child psychotherapist, called it the transitional object. So I guess it makes sense that it often becomes a special toy for them. And children often use as a way to project very positive, loving feelings onto the toy, which is quite lovely, ? I love you talking about this, Lana. So I did my PhD at the Winnicott Research Unit. So I know a lot about Winnicott's work, and this approach does have a really different perspective to the transitional object. It's really very different way of thinking. And again, please feel free. I wouldn't want to say any way of thinking is more accurate than another, but really this is a very different approach to understanding what's happening in terms of how Winnicott defined the transitional object. So yes, love that you mentioned that, and so happy to talk about it more. But yeah, it's a very different way of seeing that from this perspective. Kat, I love that calm presence, trusting that they will move through this feeling and they can handle it. Feelings are so often seen as an endpoint rather than a progress point. Absolutely, it's like, yes, we can be through that to come out the other side. And Katla, that's so beautiful, Lana, about them sharing the love with the soft toy. Phoenix, perhaps there are so many relational spaces where people feel like they are not heard or the emotions are not welcome. Absolutely, I so agree with you. Perhaps this is a big societal issue. I totally, absolutely agree. We live in a culture that's very uncomfortable with a lot of feelings. You look around, you go to any shopping centre, it's very, very clear. Our whole culture is really very uncomfortable with a very wide range of the human experience. What happens if all we have learned is repression mechanisms when it comes to expressing and feeling our emotions? I can certainly see this happening, yes. And I will be talking about the kind of things that we can do, both for our children and ourselves, once I've gone through this piece. Thank you, Mary. My pleasure, lovely. Kat, so it could be used in a touch and play game, then it could be a merge of both perhaps feelings and showing love. Yes. Yes, and yes, Phoenix. Yeah, so agree. Where are we up to? So look at this, perfect. See how in sync we are, Phoenix. Given the culture that we live in and the time that we grew up in, I don't think anyone can yet listen to 100% of their baby and child's feelings, myself included. And whatever percentage we don't understand and aren't able to listen to accumulates in our body. So that can be, whatever percentage that is. Those feelings are physiological things. They're actual body things to do with the body. They're actually physiological. Feelings aren't just, they are in the body. They are of the body. So they can lead to a whole host of physical symptoms, which tend to be the main things that parents find challenging. Again, I think this is so helpful to really remember that accumulated feelings plus the things that babies need to do to repress those feelings lead to things like agitation, constant movement, avoiding eye contact, taking a long time to get to sleep, because it's hard to sleep when you're agitated, as I'm sure you've experienced. Frequent night waking up easily before having enough sleep, because again, it's hard to sleep soundly when there's feelings bubbling up. Waking up early before having enough sleep, agitated vocalizations, tension in the hands, tension in the muscles, holding in weeing and pooing, wriggling around while sleeping, constant movement, wanting to be fed more and more often as they get older, even though their tummies get bigger. So the important things to remember are that babies aren't doing this on purpose. They'd much prefer to be calm and present and feel comfortable. They want to sleep when they're tired. And they really, again, without hitting ourselves with sticks, again, it doesn't work unless we're holding ourselves with compassion, is they really have learned to respond to their feelings based on how we've been able to respond, and that they need our help to express their feelings. And it's our loving presence and our available attention and body contact which helps those feelings to be welcomed and safe. And, you know, this is the same for older children and teens too. You know, they need less of the body contact as they get older, but it's the same things that they need. Growing up, I'm going back to reading comments. Ebony, totally off topic with the birds in the background, sounds so lovely. Thank you. Yeah, that's the usual thing. They're welcome swallows, but they come and nest inside my house, so they're here to sing to us. So as babies and toddlers get older and they have different life experiences, there's still some painful things they might experience. So they might feel jealous, so I invite you to hold yourself with compassion here. Jealous, powerless, hurt, sad or lonely when a new sibling is born. They might feel scared, afraid, helpless, and overwhelmed when they go to things like daycare or preschool or kinder or school. They might feel, so these are all mights, you know, some children won't feel these things at these times. So these are all just possibilities. They might feel powerless or rage or hurt or confusion if other children take things from them or hit them or call them names. They may feel overwhelm, confusion or powerlessness on holidays, big trips, moving house. Thank you for all the likes. They might feel powerlessness, rage, confusion, loss or sadness or hurt if their parents separate. I really experienced this with my son in particular when my ex-husband and I split up. And they may feel scared, hurt or helpless during medical procedures, including dentist visits. So again, lots of possibilities for big feelings. And I really want to invite you to see, you know, my way of seeing is that all children experience big feelings. So often parents will come to me and say, you know, my child just feels bigger feelings than every other child. And I would say that I think it's really natural for all children to experience big feelings. They live in that feeling world. And over time, as they get older, the repression mechanisms can often evolve too, as they become perhaps less kind of socially acceptable. So again, the moving them can mean that they then move on to finding it really hard to sit still. And again, that can help us be more compassionate when they just won't sit still at the dinner tables, not because they're choosing to not do that, it's because they feel agitated. They're not actually able to sit still. They're not doing it on purpose. Us distracting them through entertainment a lot, you know, when we're doing the la 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 la, can often mean toddlers and young children who really need to be constantly entertained, and when we even do one little thing, they feel upset feelings because those are the feelings bubbling up. So they'll be asking for constant entertainment. So again, that can really help. Does it help you feel more compassionate when your child is constantly doing that? To again remember, with compassion for us, that they learned it from us. You know, they're just doing what they learned to do. Us feeding them when they're upset can become them asking for feeding and food more and more often. And again, does it help you be more compassionate when they're asking for the 4th cup of milk or the 10th breastfeed at night? Again, you know, to really understand, they do generally learn these things from us. And, you know, us not having the availability to listen to them can become maybe them, like me, carrying the rabbit around every bunny. And again, it can help us feel more compassionate, like when if you have a 7-year-old and they still want their blanket, it's like, again, that's, you know, these repression mechanisms are amazing things, and they will need to keep doing them or change them in form. Same with, you know, dummy or pacifier. So if they don't want to give up at age 4, again, that's why. So the thing is, unless we listen to the underlying feelings, children will need to keep doing things to hold them in. They might become different things, but they still will need to do those. They're not choosing it. They're doing the best they can given what they've experienced. And so, you know, things can become, as I say, less acceptable. So thumb sucking maybe will transform into nail biting, because that's, you know, maybe they've gone to school and people are saying things and they'll just change it into something slightly different. Again, amazing, isn't it? Isn't our body, psyche, spirit, soul, feelings, body amazing that we can do those things? I think so. So, and as feelings accumulate, if they do accumulate more and more, children will need to do more to repress those feelings. They need to actively do more to repress them. So, and as feelings accumulate, they will also show up more and more in symptoms. So the symptoms are similar to those, all the ones we've talked about in babies, but they'll also be things that often we find most challenging. So the effects of the accumulated feelings of agitation in their bodies, because of those feelings, it's agitation, isn't it? The agitation, whining. Is that one of the most annoying things for you? Does it help to be compassionate, to know that's why they're doing it? They don't really enjoy it any more than you do. Avoiding connection, avoiding eye contact, not being able to concentrate, not being able to listen, moving from one activity then to the next, taking a long time to go to sleep, waking up frequently, waking up early, all of those things is generally because of the agitation in their body. Not always, but generally. Ebony, I'm just sitting here nodding my head. Yes, yay, I'm so glad, Ebony. And as I say, well, I didn't actually say that, but some of you may be sitting here going, I don't really resonate with that. And please feel free to not resonate with it if you don't. You know, for me, the most important thing is we listen to if something resonates with us. If it doesn't, then I think it's really helpful to find, okay, that doesn't, well, what does? To keep looking, keep searching. So then the symptoms that come from the effect of the repression mechanism. So they can be things like the constant movement, the not being able to sit still, the thumb sucking, the nail biting, the hair twirling. Has any of you got a hair twirling repression mechanism, or a child with one? Hands down the top. Any of you got that? My children both had ones where I have a little kind of moldy thing on me and they would both twiddle that. That was one of their repression mechanisms. Not being able to play independently, as we talked about. And then the feelings trying to come out, but in ways that actually don't bring relief and healing. So those are things like, we talked about this in the Facebook Live in the last couple of weeks, pinching, biting, hitting, pushing, taking, kicking. And then the attempt to express and release the painful feelings. So crying over small things, raging over small things, laughter and being silly, and doing things that they know we don't want them to do. So they're all their attempts to actually express those feelings and get them out. So what I love about this approach is that since the majority of the things that parents find challenging are caused by pent-up painful feelings and the mechanisms that children are using to hold in those feelings, understanding why, which is what I'm going on about this for so long, can lead to a whole lot of compassion for our children, which is, you know, isn't that the most helpful thing? Then we can really feel this, oh, sweetheart, you know, all the things that we may find annoying and we may then respond in ways we don't want to, which then leads to more pain for them, is holding them with absolute compassion. These darling beings, they come into the world ready to learn. They're born into this culture, and, you know, us who are evolving, and they learn these things from us, and then they're doing their best to fit within what they've learned from us. And then we're the ones that often, including myself, done it many times, we're the ones that get frustrated when actually the things that they're doing are only a result of, you know, our not being able to hear their feelings because of our own culture and our own upbringing and our own things that we haven't healed, and the fact that we live in a nuclear family culture. So I think it just can so help to go, look, they're not doing it to be annoying. They're just absolutely doing their best and really trying to deal with being a feeling being. So when we understand that a child isn't deliberately choosing to take ages to go to sleep, or to whine, or to not sit still, or to hit their sister, or keep doing things we don't enjoy, all of these are generally an effect of their experiences and feelings and how they've been responded to and how they learn to deal with those feelings. It's a whole lot easier to feel compassion and then respond compassionately. Does that make sense to you? Because it really, that's what I found the most helpful thing, is just ingraining all this stuff in me so much that it's just so much easier to be compassionate in those places where it's really easy to get frustrated and annoyed. Because it's hard, isn't it, when you're at the shops and your toddler doesn't want to get back in the car seat, or your child just doesn't seem to going to sleep and you're exhausted and you just want some time to yourself, or they just don't seem to be listening, or you just want them to sit down and have some dinner and they won't eat, or all the myriad of things that we often go through day to day is really understanding they're not doing it deliberately. They're absolutely really dealing with how they feel in their bodies. That's all they're doing. And if the more we can really understand that, the more we can feel this absolute compassion for them, even in the midst of those challenging moments, because we understand why they're doing it. Does that resonate with you? Does it feel easier to, even those of you who know this inside out, to remember that compassion? So, over to the how-to section. How can we help them get freer from repression mechanisms? And you'll notice I don't use the word free, because I really think it'd be helpful to not aim to get completely free. I mean, although if you want to, so welcome, but to be freer, for all of us to be freer from them. Phoenix, yes, it's like finding your own Buddha. I love that. I love that. And Kat, yes, fantastic. I'm so glad. How can we help them? So, and by the way, I'm going to write an article version of this. So if you want to have these bits, I'll be writing an article on it. Number one, the first step's always with us, and it's what we're talking about already. The more we can understand what's going on, and with that understand, change our ways of thinking so that the ways of thinking are compassionate. And then we're likely to be able to offer compassionate presence and listening, which is the vital thing that they need to be able to express the feelings. Isn't that great? That's what you're doing here and now. Showing up, being here, that's what you're doing. Number two, if they're engaged in a repression mechanism, having a compassionate way of thinking about ourselves and our parenting. We're judging ourselves. Oh, it's because of all those times I didn't listen, or I should have done this, or I shouldn't have done that, or I'm this, or I'm that. If we're doing that, that guilt and that pain from those emotional sticks is going to take away our capacity to be present and available and compassionate with our child. We're causing emotional bruises, which actually means we're less able to give them what they need in order to express their feelings. And as I say, I used to do that, and I really found out firsthand it actually works against what we're wanting. We think, oh, we'll feel really guilty and terrible, and that'll make us a more competent parent. It's actually the opposite. The more we're sitting in guilt, the less presence that we have to give to our kids. So I really invite you, you may have heard my work, see if you can just start putting down the emotional sticks. No, I'm not willing to judge myself. This is hard. We live in a culture that is really uncomfortable with feelings. I grew up in this culture. I didn't get this. This was new. I don't know many people who are doing, all the kinds of things you could say to yourself instead. Compassion, compassion, compassion. The more you can be compassionate with yourself and put the stick down around self-judgment, the more you're able to provide the quality of loving, present attention that they actually need to express their feelings. Number three, same if we're judging the repression mechanism as bad or wrong, as something we have to eliminate. So that's likely to lead to a desire to kind of smash it, get rid of it as soon as possible, which again doesn't give the kind of quality that's most actually conducive to listening to feelings. And again, I learned this firsthand. I was like an absolute, control patterns were like the terriblest of the terrible when I first started this. And then I kind of go in with it. Often I get more and more kind of forcey, and this is kind of like yin yang. It's like Taoism. If you force against something and you try and push it, it will get stronger, and it doesn't actually work. And our children will feel that too. If we go in with like, I want to get rid of this repression mechanism, that's not so helpful for them feeling a sense of presence and unconditional love from you and me. Number four, help ourselves have more compassionate presence. So that includes the ways of thinking that we've talked about, but it also means that we can doing whatever we can to make sure our needs cup isn't completely empty, and that our own painful feelings cup isn't like here, because babies and children are intimately in that feelings world. They feel into our emotional state in ways that we're not really even able to do, because that's the world they live in. And they're much less likely to share their feelings with us if we're depleted or are in lots of pain. They will wait. They will wait until we're more resourced, so we're actually able to give them that quality of presence. So having an empathy buddy can really help this. I really recommend an empathy buddy. So helpful. Someone who'll listen. Number 5, perceiving repression mechanisms as flags for feelings. I love this way of looking at things. I love the flags for feelings thing. So whenever your child picks their nose or twirls their hair or sucks their thumb, it's a flag. That's all it is. It's a flag. It's like being a, if you're into awareness practice, it's a feeling arising. That is all it is. It's not meaning that we are bad, wrong, la, 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 all that stuff. It's really an amazing thing. We get to see, again, our child's emotional state. We're getting to see the inside of their psyche. That's all those things are showing us. And again, if we can hold that without judgment, without conclusions about what that's going to mean about their future or what is meant about their past, and we can actually be kind of curious, oh gosh, there's some feelings bubbling up for them right now. Again, we're going to be able to meet them in the here and now, which is what is the antidote to repression. Number 6, understanding that as we come to understand the source of her repression mechanisms, we're understanding that it may take her time to shift her way of interpreting things. Because remember, it's not only just the thing she's doing, it's actually the interpretation of what her inner state is telling her. So yeah, we might have suddenly go, oh my gosh, it's not actually that you're hungry or this or that, the other, that's actually feelings. And we kind of might go in, okay, blah, blah, blah. But it can take them time because that's the whole initial experience. They need time to go, oh, okay, so this is a feeling. This isn't actually that I'm, I need to move or whatever it is. So if we've always moved to when she was upset, she'll perceive upset feelings as a need to move. And as we understand it's actually just repressing her feelings, we're going to mirror her, respond to her in different ways. But it takes time for the mirror neurons to kick in for that new inner and outer kind of matching to happen for her. And I think really, again, having compassion for what it actually feels like for her. We've been doing all this stuff probably, and sometimes for some time, and suddenly we're shifting it. And that, that can take time for her to shift, or him to shift. Number 7, loving presence is the antidote to repression mechanisms. So we generally use repression mechanisms when there's just not quite enough loving presence and availability. And again, let's not hit ourselves with sticks. It doesn't mean our children don't feel loved. It just means there wasn't quite enough in that moment. Loving presence is the antidote. Here and now, loving presence. So in practical terms, really, really practical terms, it can mean things like coming close, slowing down, offering eye contact, gentle touch, and this, beautiful quality of presence and attention with them. And again, the beautiful thing is they internalize those responses. So the more we can offer this unconditionally loving presence, even when they're, including when they're repressing feelings, and when they're expressing feelings, and even using aggression, the more they internalize that unconditional love for themselves. So they're not going, oh, I'm sucking my thumb, so that means, I shouldn't be doing this, and it's bad, and it's wrong, and la, 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 which I think often, if you maybe bit your nails and your parents were shaming you and they painted that horrible stuff on you, you're probably then not only feeling upset, but then having another layer because you learned all this judgment about repression mechanisms. And that's another reason I'm really into compassion for them, because it's this beautiful part of us that's trying to protect ourselves. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just another facet of human experience. Unconditional love for every single part. So loving presence can also include our presence, our tone of voice, eye contact, our emotional tone. So again, that's why the thinky piece is so important. If we're going and thinking, oh, damn, excuse me if you've got kids that, she's sucking her thumb again. If we're thinking that, you can feel that it's going to be quite a different emotional state from, oh, my sweetheart, there's some feelings bubbling for her. Oh, I'd love to go in and be there with her. It's going to be quite different, isn't it? And again, that emotional tone is what children live in and pick up on. They live in that world. So if we're feeling guilty angry, which is what we're going to be feeling for doing all that judgment stuff. We're going to feel that rather than the loving presence. By the way, it isn't possible to guilt yourself out of guilt. So if you're guilting yourself around guilting yourself, it doesn't really work. Putting the stick down is a really helpful way of doing it. So the loving presence includes an appreciation for the repression mechanisms. It doesn't mean we're going to accept it and kind of say it's going to be there forever, because it won't. And it doesn't mean we're going to give up on wanting to help them express the underlying feelings. But it does mean that the more we can appreciate it and appreciate that it was there and that it did need to be there for whatever those reasons are, and to offer the kinds of conditions that will help our baby or child be freer again to express those feelings. You know, that real unconditional love, and for ourselves as well. I'll be talking about that, and I've nearly finished, but having that same quality of compassion for our gratitude for our repression mechanisms. Number 8, words as well, also that match and reflect that loving presence, including honouring and mirroring of the repression mechanism. So one lovely mama wrote to me, and I didn't ask her whether she was happy for me to include her name, so I won't include her name, but she said, I forgot to mention something else I say when C has her fingers in her mouth. I wonder if there's something you're not saying. I'm listening if you want to say more. Since I started saying that, I usually can't get through the whole sentence before she's returned to crying. Often really not fighting that repression mechanism, but really including it as part of the experience can actually free up our little ones to stop. And we might even say things like, and again in your own language, you might say, I know you needed to put your fingers in your mouth when we kept taking your sister to school in the car. I really understand that, sweetheart. And I couldn't listen to your feelings then, and I'm sorry. You might want to say that. I'm sorry I wasn't able to listen to you then. And I am here now, and I am listening. I would really love to hear them now. But we can really, start really honouring that was the choice they made. That was the only thing they really could do in that moment. Number 9, attachment play with the repression mechanism. This is a great, great thing. I think it can be so wonderful. So attachment play, if you're not familiar, is another element of aware parenting. So important, so effective with repression mechanisms. Attachment play creates a deep sense of connection. And remember, that's the connection, the loving presence. That's the antidote to repression. It evokes laughter, which releases feelings such as fear and frustration and powerlessness. And so in itself, it helps release some of the feelings that underlie the repression mechanism. So I have a free course on attachment play. I'll share some links later, but I'd love to share a couple of examples. So I always remember this day I did a session with a mama and 2 of her kids, and they both were big nose pickers. So we did this game for about 45 minutes, excuse me, where I'd say, so we would kind of brought around the nose picking, and I'd say, okay, so what flavour is that bogey? Is that strawberry? Is it strawberry? And I'd pretend, and this may sound a bit disgusting to you, but bringing in laughter can so help. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to have a taste of it, and I hope it's strawberry. Is it strawberry? And they'd be like, yeah. And then I'd clearly pretend to eat the bogeys. And I'd go, can I taste it? Their finger would be there. I'd be like, And then I'd be like, oh, that's not strawberry. That's poo flavour. And they'd laugh and laugh and laugh. And then I'd say again, okay, so I'm going to do it again. But this time you're not going to trick me, are you? You're not going to trick me. So what flavour is it this time? And they'd be like, chocolate. And I'd be like, chocolate, okay, fantastic, lovely, lovely. So we'd basically repeat the same game over and over again. And you may be thinking, I really don't want to do that for 45 minutes. So there's no have to about this. But how amazing that we can help our children release feelings that they've been holding in, and then potentially shift a repression mechanism that may continue for the rest of their lives and morph into something else. We have the capacity to do that through play. The other thing about attachment play is it often can loosen up the deeper feelings. So what happened after about 45 minutes is, and I don't really remember what it was, some little thing happened and one of them went into this big rage and big cry. And the mama listened, and I supported her with both the kids, and the child didn't really cry, and there was a big, massive, massive cry. So that's really common when we do attachment play with repression mechanisms. We play with them, we're bringing love to them. That's part of it. We're loving that. We're to see with that play, rather than going, oh, you know, don't do that or stop that. Absolutely loving it, and we're bringing it to the center, because it's the flag. Going in through the flag is the way. The flag is, you know, it's like the golf. I think of a golf flag. That's where the golf ball is there. It's taking us to the treasure. The flag takes us straight to the treasure. Let's not try and push away the flag. And often I remember when I was, you know, my daughter was little, and I didn't really get this, and she'd do this fiddly thing, and I'd kind of try and get her to stop rather than going in through there. Oh, what are you doing? You know, that's what I would do now. Now playing with whatever they're doing, that is the route into the feelings. The flag is the exact route in. You know, the repression mechanism sits on top of the treasure of the feelings. That's why they're so amazing. They're literally the direct route in to their painful feelings. That's why loving them is so important, because if we're trying to push them away, we can't see them as the flags, the beautiful flags that they are. Let me say another really great one can be, like I did this with, I did this in the attachment play course. If you've done that, you'll recognize this video. And it was the no puppies on the couch. And this one's the no, it can be the no sucking the thumb game. So, and this can be really helpful if you have got frustrated around your child doing a repression mechanism. It might be hair twirling or grabbing onto their clothes or sucking their clothes, or so they might be on the couch, and that's because my couch is there, and you might say, okay, so let's play this game, and when I turn around, whatever you do, don't suck your thumb, will you? Whatever you do, don't suck your thumb. And if they're younger, you might need to kind of really give them something. Yeah, you suck your thumb. Yeah, okay. And then I'll turn around, I go, and then turn around, and they're sucking the thumb, and I go, no, you said you wouldn't suck your thumb, and no. And then again, let's repeat it. Okay, so this time you're really not going to, are you? And then turn around, do the same. And often it, you know, really releases lots and lots of laughter. And that's a great one, I think, because especially we have been frustrated, we get to release our feelings of frustration. They get to release any feelings of hurt that they've had around our responses, and also the underlying feelings. So, so what can happen after lots of attachment play, either at the end of that, or as I shared about the nose picking one, or later on that day, is the next thing. And before I go to the next thing, number 10, which is only 2 more, I'd love to read your comments. Phoenix, would you ask them compassionately, what are you feeling? Is it about them naming their feelings or feeling their feelings? I love the question. The younger the child is, I think it's more helpful. And I actually think, you know, I think it's experimenting, but my way of coming to this is I used to be very thinky about feelings, and I think it really meant my daughter got thinky. So the parts of, you know, our consciousness that actually releases feelings is quite different from the part that thinks about it. So I think if they're holding in feelings, it's often more helpful, rather than going in the way that we often go in with feelings, is to go in through play and connection rather than the thinky bit. And the thinky bit often is really helpful more afterwards. So yes, of course, part of it is mirroring their feelings, so they get that, the language and the concept of different feelings. But I think generally for children, actually going in more with really meeting the feeling through playing, through listening to crying and raging, can be more helpful, rather than going in more thinky, like, well, what are you thinking? Then they need to think about, you know, what are you feeling? And they kind of need to think about what they're feeling. But again, there's no right or wrong here. It's really kind of experimenting and seeing what happens and seeing the effect afterwards. Kat, so I love that appreciation that it did need to be there. Absolutely needed to be there, otherwise it wouldn't be there. This will really help me in those oh no, not again moments. I'm so glad, Kat. I love that, so simple and beautiful. That feels like total acceptance of the repression and the feelings, and the willingness to listen in an invitation. Oh, lovely. Brenda, not sure if I already mentioned, because my sound stopped working. Once we start listening, how long does it usually take for a baby or toddler to cry? Again, there's no hard or fast rules. It really depends on how many feelings they have, the way they've learned to repress them, how much we're holding on to, how present we're able to be, you know, how much we're able to kind of pick up on these kinds of things. There is no one way. You know, it's going to differ for everybody. So my apologies. I hear that you'd like some clarity on the exact amount of time. There really isn't. You know, everyone's different. Hi, Lucy, welcome. Kat, yes, I love that perspective. 45 minutes could equate to change for a lifetime. Absolutely, know that. Oh gosh, my repression mechanisms are welcome. There's something that we can have fun with. There's something that really can be played. Oh my God, how amazing. You know, how, and I'm going to say this in a minute for ourselves, you know, how would it be to, if you do find yourself scrolling Facebook, to not judge yourself, to really love that in that moment that you're doing that, you're repressing feelings, but not to judge it, to actually love that part of yourself as well, that it's just as valid and just as valuable as the part that is able to express the feelings in the moment. Lucy, hello, I'm late. I think in mix-up time. Yes, we've already been an hour and a half. But it's, the recording will be here, so you're so welcome to watch. I'm nearly finished. Kat, I just saw the repression mechanism as the treasure trove, holding the feelings treasure. I was thinking that too. Love it, Kat. Exactly. It is. It's a treasure trove. Rachel, I missed you live because my 4-year-old was having a big rage. I'm tired. A big love to you. I really hear that you're tired. And yay for listening. Yay for listening. And that can often happen, you know, as we listen into this, they can often feel that again because they live in that energetic world. You may find after this, your child does go and have a big cry. But not only you, because that you've already had that. But so again, it's because it's our emotional state that has the biggest impact on their capacity to express feelings. And again, see, put the sticks down if you get tempted. It's hard. It is also hard. Susanna, hi Marion, thank you for sharing all this amazing info with us. Unfortunately, I need to log off now. Thank you. It's been long. I have nearly finished. I really have. Kat, I hear how tired you're feeling, Rachel. I love that you held space for your ragey 4-year-old. That's valuable, tiring work. Okay, number 10, nearly finished. Listening to crying, raging, and tantrums. So, crying, raging, and tantrums, as I'm sure all of you know, they're like therapy for kids. It's them letting out those painful feelings. And so often, again, when we play, we do attachment play with the repression mechanisms. That quality of loving presence and play frees up the deeper, more painful feelings to emerge. The rage and the loss and the sadness and the grief and the frustration, they all come out in the tears and the raging, the tantrums, with our loving presence. Number 11, last one, loving limits with repression mechanism. So there is this possibility that you set a loving limit with the repression mechanism. So clearly that's possible if it's an external thing like a dummy or a pacifier or a soft toy or a screen, but clearly not if it's a muscle tension, and I wouldn't recommend that at all with thumb sucking either. But however, even if you do choose to do this, I really recommend having a lot of caution and awareness and observation. So I'd also recommend, if you are going to do a loving limit, is to start off with attachment play, and preferably over days or even weeks beforehand. So it really is freeing up those lighter feelings. And if you are going to set a loving limit, I'd also recommend letting your child know beforehand. So if you're going to help them stop having a dummy when they're going to sleep, I'd be telling them perhaps in the morning, so tonight, sweetheart, I'm going to help you go to sleep without your dummy, and I'm going to be right here. I'm going to be listening to you. I'm going to be right here with you. I also wouldn't suggest going cold turkey, so I wouldn't suggest taking away a repression mechanism forever, because that repression mechanism has potentially been holding in a lot of feelings, and you know, for however long they've had it, it's been holding out that many feelings. Suddenly taking it away, even if then you listen to some of the feelings, even if they cry for half an hour, there's likely to be a whole lot more feelings than that. And at the end, you know, once your capacity to listen has finished, or they've let out one chunk, there's still going to be all these feelings in their system. So they're going to then need to find something else pretty pronto to stop the rest of them feeling flooded from the rest of the feelings. So it's really going to be preferable to, if you can, I would probably then more likely to maybe set a loving limit for the, you know, sweetheart, later, I'll give you your tummy later, that she has a big cry, and then give it back if that's what you usually do, if there's usually free choice around it. So I really wouldn't recommend taking a repression mechanism away cold turkey, because no, if we don't listen to all of those feelings, they will need to do something else with them. And I think that's why really appreciating and understanding how important repression mechanisms are. And, you know, particularly the more big feelings a baby or child has had, and particularly for us, you know, who many of us have many years before, you know, however many years before we started listening to them, they're holding in a lot of stuff, and we let go of them. You know, we suddenly say, well, I'm never going to eat chocolate again. You know, we may then need to start looking at Instagram more often, or whatever your thing of choice is. Last thing, so the thing you could do is, if you do then do that for that night, then give the dummy back, or the soft toy, or whatever it is, and then wait again till you have the capacity to listen and do the same again, and put in lots of attachment play still. So last thing, what can we do to help ourselves with repression mechanisms? So loving presence is an antidote for us too. This can mean setting loving limits with self-judgment and giving ourselves that quality of loving presence when we're about to check Facebook for the umpteenth time. We can do the same for ourselves with playing with attachment play around our repression mechanisms, getting our friend or partner to come and listen to us, or, you know, just texting a friend, or even saying, you know, I'm checking my text for the 20th time today, or whatever it is, just reaching out, because connection, loving presence is the antidote to repression. And we can also develop our own inner loving crew, so that then those parts in us can listen to us. Right here, sweetheart. Yeah, I see that you're upset. I really hear that you're feeling sad, and I really hear that you really want to reach out and you know, have a glass of wine now. And, you know, you're so free to do that if you want. I absolutely love you, whatever you choose to do, and I'm here and I'm listening. You know, it's that quality of absolute unconditional love. Last thing, what happens when we're freer of repression mechanisms? Well, we're more able to live in the present moment. We're all more able to feel our bodies, our amazing bodies, our feelings. We're more capable of connection and presence and intimacy. And that's why listening to whatever we can of the feelings of our babies and children is such a gift. It means that they're more connected with who they really are. And who they really are is presence and awareness and eye contact, and really seeing and being seen. It's awareness of their own body and their own movements, so that they know their capacities, so that they know and what they're capable of, so they're not kind of tripping up and falling over. It's the capacity to concentrate for long periods on one thing. It's having compassion for their feelings, the feelings of others, because they've internalized that from us. It's knowing that feelings are their friends, and being able to stay present in their body sensations when they have uncomfortable feelings, which isn't that the most amazing thing? And we can give, you know, we can become freer. They can become freer to be able to be more present with whatever's showing up in the moment. Being able to sit still, being able to sleep without fidgeting, the capacity to sleep until they've had enough sleep, being gentle, because that's our true nature, being cooperative, and having a life energy that's clear rather than agitated. So there's a calmness, but clearly, and, you know, a life energy that's free, or freer. So what can you do? So I'm going to read all your comments first. Thank you so much for those of you who stayed the whole time. It's a long one. I knew it was going to be long. Rachel, thank you, Marianne. Big hugs. Can you comment on holding your child? My 4-year-old runs around the house trying to break things when in a rage, so I've been holding him. He hates it but cries a lot when I'm holding him. Yeah, another way is finding a place maybe to close the door when you're in a room and sit by the door. That can be a way that often people are much more comfortable with, and we can be much clearer that it's you know, they're not crying about the holding. So finding a way of setting a limit with that's another way. Yes, holding's a whole different thing. We might need to do a whole Facebook Live, and that's a very powerful thing to be used with lots of discretion and awareness. Lucy, thank you. I feel breastfeeding has been our big repression number, so this info will be a great help in the journey to change it. Well, thanks, Lucy. Lots of love to you. So I know a lot of you know and have also done a lot of these before, but if you want to find out more, I'm just going to give you a few resources. So I have lots of free and paid courses and all this stuff on my website, marianrose.net. There's a section which are my courses for you. So I have a massive free introduction to aware parenting. If this is kind of new, it goes into the ins and outs of it all. I love it. There's a free Babies Have Real Feelings ebook, and then there's a self-paced Aware Parenting Babies course. That's a paid one. There's a free intro to sound sleep and secure attachment, and there is also a 5-week course, again a paid one. There's a free intro on making friends with children's feelings, which also goes a lot into each repression mechanism and how we can respond. And there's that's the self-paced version, so that's the paid version. So the intro is kind of more similar to this. There's a free intro to attachment play course, and there's also a 4-week attachment play course. Of course, it's all Aletha Salter's work, really, so appreciate her. So that's awareparenting.com, and her books, amazing, recommend them all. And there's a free Facebook page, an Aware Parenting International Facebook page. That's fantastic, highly recommend. Yeah, so there's lots of resources out there, and I think the most important thing I hope you've really got is it really is so much about our emotional state. So the more we can be compassionate with ourselves, meet our needs, listen to our own feelings, the more we can help our children. So I really hope that you go away with that deep sense of how important your well-being is, not in a guilty way, but in a loving way. Thank you so much for being here. I know it was really long. Kat, enjoying every moment with Marion. Thank you, lovely. Wondering whether I should mention my question about helping Hugh distinguish between hunger and sleep. I know you wanted to come back to it and understand if you'd like to get back to it another time. So I think really, the thing is what we mirror to them is what they internalize. So if he's got those a little bit, and it may, not just you, but culturally, really mirroring to him. So you getting clearer and then responding to those. So when you're really clear that actually you don't think he's hungry, and really helping him sleep without the food, and tuning in with him. So I used to do things like, I think you already said that you do that, playing with it and helping him listen in. How does your tummy feel? I used to do that with Lana about this age, 4 or 5, when we were eating, we'd listen in to her, and she was actually way more competent than I was at 4. How do you feel when you start eating? How do you feel after a few mouthfuls? And we'd listen into exactly how our bodies felt. I think it would be an amazing thing to do with our children. And as I say, she was way more competent than I was. So that kind of thing can be really helpful. What does it actually feel? How do we feel in our bodies when we feel tired? Where do we feel sensations? What are we actually feeling? I think that would be so wonderful. So hope that helps, and thank you for the question. My apologies, I forgot. Kat, I recommend all of the courses Marion has mentioned. Thank you, Kat, for doing them all. So appreciate you. Brenda, appreciate your time and help. Marion, many thanks. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for, I know how precious your time is, and hope it was helpful. I'm sending all lots of love. I think it's such important work that you're all doing, and yeah, come and share more if you have more to share. And I think I'll probably do a Q&A next week on this if you want to come and ask more specific questions tailored to your unique family, and I'd love to see what I can do if I can help. Lots of love. Bye, everyone.